Looking live at southern Israel and Gaza hours after a hostage and ceasefire deal has been reached between Israel and Hamas. Let's get right to the White House National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby and how the U.S. helped get to this point. Admiral Kirby, good to have you on the program today. So please do give us your update as we now see the latest update is that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has now spoken to both President-elect Trump and President Biden.
Yeah, that's right. The president did have a conversation with the prime minister here just a little bit ago to start working on implementation, because now is the hard work of getting this deal in place. It'll start this weekend, and then there'll be a 6-week phase for phase 1, and then we're off to the races to try to get to phase 2 and phase 3 and get all the hostages and the remains of those who aren't alive back home with their families and, of course, end this war. So a lot of coordination today. This is a very good day, not just for the United States, but, of course, for all those hostage families that have been living with such uncertainty and fear and anxiety. And, of course, it's a big day for those hostages that they'll be able to get back home with their families.
Admiral Kirby, can you tell us about the sensitivity of this deal and whether or not the American public who is watching this play out in the world really can have confidence that this will go all the way through?
We're confident, and the president said so today, that this will be implemented. Now, that doesn't mean there's not hard work ahead, which is why we were so fixed on making sure that Mr. Witkoff and the incoming Trump team were a part and parcel of these negotiations and talks all along, because they're going to have to now do the work of helping implement that. And that's a lot. It's going to be a lot of hard work to keep all the commitments made over coming days and weeks. But it's going to be, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It could be difficult at times, but the big hurdle has been overcome, and that's getting the deal, getting it inked, getting it in place, and hopefully come this weekend, we'll start to see some families be reunited. Can
you give us a little color about what those negotiations were like and your involvement of the incoming administration and the president-elect's team? You just mentioned Witkoff, that's the Middle East envoy, obviously. Yeah. How did those negotiations go, and what was it like working with the two teams?
You know, the president said it best today. We worked on this as one team, as the American people would expect us to do. Nobody's worried here, and nobody's worried in America, or the hostages are certainly not worried about who gets credit. We worked on this as a team. It was the negotiation that started in this administration, and certainly the deal that the president laid forward in May that eventually got over the finish line. But it was really critical, and the president made it clear to us on the national security team that we needed to make sure that the Trump team, in particular Mr. Witkoff, were part and parcel and fully invested in everything we were doing, because they were going to own it when we left office. And so Mr. Witkoff traveled to the region. He and Brett McGurk, our special coordinator for the Middle East, talked multiple times a day over the last week or so as we were getting down to the fine details and trying to get it over the finish line. And Mr. Witkoff himself credited the work that he was able to enjoy by working with us. But look, the bottom line was getting the deal, getting the hostages home, getting the war to end. And both President-elect Trump and certainly President Biden shared that goal and made sure that their teams also shared that outcome.
Am I right if I say it sounds like you're giving President-elect's team a lot of credit for getting this deal over the finish line?
We're not focused too much on the credit. I think, again, as the president said, I mean, we approach this as one team, a team of Americans to try to get Americans back home with their families, and that's what matters. I think there's plenty of credit to go around, and it's not just here in the United States, Sandra. I mean, Egypt, Qatar, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who made some courageous decisions throughout this negotiation. There's plenty of credit to go around to everybody. What matters most is getting those hostages home.
So many all over the world have been praying for these hostages to come home, and we do know that President-elect Trump did lay out a red line that all hell will break loose if we don't get those hostages home by the day he takes office. Talk about phase 1. As you are saying, this is now up to the incoming administration to implement the details of this plan. Take us through, for example, phase 1 and what this looks like in getting those hostages home.
So phase 1 is a critical phase. Obviously, it's the first one. We're talking about 6 weeks, and you're going to start seeing, hopefully as soon as this weekend, you're going to see some of the most at-risk hostages coming out. This is women, elderly, those who are ill or injured, coming out in these first tranches. You'll also see, as we saw before, an exchange. Political prisoners that Israel is holding, that Hamas wants back, will also start to be returned. So you're going to have an exchange there, but the hostages come back, and it's those most at risk. The second thing you're going to see is an immediate ceasefire. So the bombing will stop, the fighting will stop, and that will bring an amazing amount of relief to the people of Gaza who continue to fall victim to the conflict itself. And then the third thing you're going to see really in this first 6 weeks is a dramatic surge in humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza who are in such desperate need of it. There's going to be a real concerted effort to get them the food, the water, the medicine, all the things that they need to subsist and to survive. That's the 6 weeks. The last thing I'll say about that 6 weeks, and this is a really, really important point, Sandra, is that as we work on those implementing details, the two sides, in fact, and I'm sure the United States will be involved in this, will start to work on the negotiations to get to phase 2. Because phase 2 means a withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza, a further exchange of more hostages. In this case, this will be males of military age and those who are members of the IDF. So there's a whole other set of exchanges that have to happen in phase 2. While we're in phase 1, the teams will be working to get to phase 2.
Just absolute emotion all over the world. We've been seeing those live pictures, especially there in Tel Aviv, as we do highly anticipate the hostage transfers to begin, and we all pray that that will be the case. Admiral, if I could ask you to further expand on what changed. Maybe this is a different way to ask the question, but I'll let you answer perhaps again or differently. We go back to May, and we did see President Biden lay out the details of this plan, as he referenced today. That certainly was the case, and that certainly did happen. But we're just days from the incoming administration taking office. And people might be asking themselves, well, what did change? Was it that news conference last week where the president did lay out that red line, that there will be hell to pay if these hostages are not home by Inauguration Day?
What really led to where we got to what really changed was what happened on the battlefield itself. It was primarily two things: Hamas being dramatically weakened by Israeli strikes. I mean, their leaders taken off the battlefield, Sinwar being killed, infrastructure and tunnels being destroyed. They were dramatically weaker since May. They have become dramatically weaker. And then the second big thing that happened was they became increasingly isolated, thanks in part to the ceasefire that the United States brokered between Israel and Hezbollah. They couldn't count on Hezbollah to come to their rescue anymore. They couldn't count on Iran to come to their rescue anymore. So those were the big things that changed. Now, look, President-elect Trump, in his comments, I mean, I would take issue with the hell to pay, because there was awful lot of hell to pay already for the people of Gaza and for the people of Israel on October 7th. There was an awful lot of hell that was already paid. But look, he came in and he could have said things in the public space that could have thrown these negotiations off or delayed them. He didn't do that. He made it clear that, just like President Biden, he wanted to see the hostages released, and he wanted to see them released right now and as soon as possible. And, of course, we shared that goal with him. So that does need to be said.
John Kirby joining us live with this significant news and details of it. And we appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.